For over a decade, Rex Heuermann lived the unremarkable life of a suburban father and architect. In 2023, DNA recovered from a discarded pizza crust linked him to a series of killings that had remained unsolved for 13 years. The case began in 2010. While searching a remote stretch of Ocean Parkway near Gilgo Beach, police discovered the remains of 4 women, bound and hidden in the brush along the highway. Known as the Gilgo 4, all 4 victims had disappeared between 2007 and 2010. All were young mothers who had worked as sex workers to support their families. As the search expanded through the following year, investigators located more remains. In total, 11 bodies were found scattered along the beach, some dating back 2 decades. The killer targeted marginalized women and utilized the region's isolated geography to avoid detection, leaving investigators with a crime scene that spanned miles of coastline. Despite years of forensic analysis, police found no early physical evidence that could identify a suspect. The outdoor environment and the time elapsed since the killings left traditional leads cold. For the next decade, the case remained at a standstill. No arrests were made, and the investigation moved into a state of total silence while the killer remained unidentified. Resolving the case required investigators to pivot toward a different category of evidence: the digital records of the killer's phone usage. In 2022, a task force re-examined the records of burner phones used to contact the victims. They focused on tracing the specific cell towers these phones communicated with. Cell tower analysis revealed a specific pattern. 2 distinct clusters of activity emerged, one in Midtown Manhattan and another in a residential area of Long Island. Cross-referencing these pings narrowed the search to a specific radius in Massapequa Park. This digital data led investigators to Rex Heuermann. Heuermann was a 60-year-old architect who lived with his wife and children. His daily commute to Manhattan aligned directly with the locations identified in the phone records. The data showed that the movements of the burner phones mirrored the routine of his professional and personal life. While the digital pings established a connection, investigators needed physical genetic evidence to link him. In January 2023, police began surveilling Heuermann during his commute. They tracked him from his home in Massapequa Park to his workplace in Midtown Manhattan. During this surveillance, Heuermann discarded a pizza crust in a public trash can. Police recovered the item immediately for DNA testing. Forensic analysts extracted DNA from that crust. It provided a match to a male hair found on one of the Gilgo Beach victims. Following his arrest in July 2023, a search of his home uncovered a digital blueprint for the killings, checklists detailing how to dispose of evidence. The combination of microscopic DNA evidence and years of digital tracking provided the foundation for the criminal charges against him. In April 2026, Heuermann's defense team announced a surprise decision. Just months before the trial was set to begin, he entered a guilty plea. Heuermann admitted to the murders of 8 women. This included the Gilgo 4 and 4 other victims, one of whom was a cold case from 1996 that had remained uncharged until that moment. When asked how he committed the crimes, Heuermann responded to the court with a single word, repeated for each count: strangulation. During his sentencing in June 2026, Heuermann declined to offer an apology to the 13 family members in attendance, stating that any words he offered would have no meaning. Witnesses described his demeanor as entirely emotionless, a trait that the victims' families noted as he was led away to serve his sentence. Heuermann was sentenced to consecutive life terms without parole. As part of his agreement, he began cooperating with the FBI to review other unsolved cases across the country. The Gilgo Beach murders illustrate how a predator can exist within a normal community for years without drawing suspicion from neighbors or colleagues. Though the investigation spanned over a decade, the case was eventually resolved through the intersection of digital forensics and genetic science, highlighting how modern technology is closing the gaps where cold cases once resided.
Keep watching. Your next video starts now.
On the morning of February 4th, 2010, the town of Fallbrook, California, lived up to its local nickname, the Friendly Village. It was a quiet, comfortable community in northern San Diego County where nothing out of the ordinary seemed likely to happen. Joseph and Summer McStay had recently settled there with their 2 young sons, 4-year-old Gianni and 3-year-old Joseph Jr. By all accounts, they were a happy, closely knit family, busy building a new life. That new life was largely funded by Joseph's business. He designed and sold custom indoor water fountains, providing the family with a solid financial foundation. But when friends and relatives couldn't reach them a few days later, police conducted a welfare check. Inside the house, officers found bowls of popcorn sitting on the counter, half-eaten. They found no signs of forced entry and absolutely no signs of a struggle. The home lacked any physical indicators of a crime scene. Instead, it looked exactly as if a perfectly happy family of 4 had simply stood up, walked out the door, and abandoned their own lives. Investigators located the family's abandoned SUV parked in San Ysidro, sitting right against the U.S.-Mexico border. Shortly after, digital forensics uncovered a series of recent web searches on Summer McStay's computer, asking specifically about travel into Mexico. This map highlights the primary theory law enforcement adopted. With the car at the border and digital searches as waypoints, a line was drawn straight down from Fallbrook to San Ysidro, cementing the idea they crossed into Mexico voluntarily. The McStays' extended family refused to believe they would leave without a word, but the physical evidence was convincing enough to stall the investigation. For 3 agonizing years, the case went completely cold. The specific placement of the vehicle and the digital search history provided a logical framework that misled police for years, effectively hiding the crime behind a plausible story of a voluntary disappearance. That narrative held until November 2013, roughly 100 miles away from the McStay home, in the remote stretches of the Mojave Desert near Victorville. An off-road motorcyclist riding through the brush stumbled across something protruding from the earth. He had found 2 shallow graves containing the remains of 2 adults and 2 children. Forensic testing confirmed the grim reality. The bodies belonged to Joseph, Summer, Gianni, and Joseph Jr. Buried right alongside them was a rusted sledgehammer. Autopsy results showed that every single victim, including the 2 toddlers, had died from fatal blunt force trauma to the skull. The Mojave discovery proved the family was murdered and buried within hours of disappearing, rendering the previous theories about the border crossing obsolete. The investigation immediately pivoted back to Joseph's inner circle, landing squarely on Charles Chase Merritt, a close friend and business associate in the Fountain Company. Detectives uncovered a massive financial motive. Merritt was drowning in severe gambling debt and owed Joseph over $42,000 for botched work. Worse, Joseph was actively preparing to cut him out of the business. This timeline illustrates Merritt's cover-up. On the left, the disappearance date, February 4th. On the right, Merritt draining bank accounts, writing backdated checks. The digital trail expands. Cell data pings Merritt's phone in the remote Mojave Desert, exactly at the grave sites, years before their discovery. This electronic footprint showed detectives that Merritt had driven the McStay's SUV to the border himself, planting the web searches and the vehicle to stage a misdirection. The killer successfully weaponized geography to buy himself years of freedom, but he failed to realize that banking ledgers and cell pings are immune to false narratives. The sheer volume of evidence led to one of the longest trials in San Bernardino County history. Over 50 days of testimony in 2019, prosecutors methodically proved that Merritt executed the family to erase his own financial ruin. The jury returned a verdict of guilty on all 4 counts of first-degree murder, resulting in a formal sentence of death. During the sentencing, the forensic data gave way to the human cost of the crime. Joseph's mother, Susan Blake, stood in the courtroom and demanded that Merritt carry the memory of 2 small children crying out for their parents for the rest of his life. Despite his continued claims of innocence, Merritt remains incarcerated on death row at San Quentin today. Joseph McStay was killed by a man he trusted, a business partner who decided that burying an entire family in the desert was the only way to escape his own debt.